What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Have At It. My name is Ben Cornett, and we are live on YouTube on Ben Cornett 9015. That's my channel. Again, my YouTube channel, Ben Cornett 9015, as well as on Facebook in the Ben Zone Facebook group. So, how is everybody doing this evening? It is Monday, June 1st, 2026. And yeah, this is been quite a day in the NFL. We'll get to that. We'll also preview the NBA Finals and the Stanley Cup Finals. So, before we do anything, I just want to say give me a like, share, and subscribe on my YouTube channel and on Facebook. I really appreciate that. So let's dig right into it, man. This is going to be quite the sports week this week. We got two professional sports that's going to have their championships series begin. But right now, we're going to talk about the NFL. And I tell you, like I said, quite a day in the NFL. We had two big trades. I would say one's a really massive trade. And we'll go ahead and talk about that one first. We all know that, well, unless you just woke up or crawling out of a rock. The Cleveland Browns traded Myles Garrett today to the Los Angeles Rams. In exchange, the Rams are sending defensive end Jared Verse, a 2027 first-round pick, a 2028 second-round pick, and a 2029 third-round pick. Well, I think we all knew that, in the last few days when the Browns were restructuring Myles Garrett's contract, you kind of saw something coming as far as the trade goes, and the Rams being the ones that won out. I would have thought it would have been a team like, Philly. We'll talk about Philly. They made a trade today, but the Rams were the ones that pulled it off. And looking at the Rams situation right now, I think in the short term, it's absolutely a great trade because you're getting the best defensive end in football. Broke the single season record for most sacks in a season. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer when his career's over with. Jared Verse was very good. Don't get me wrong. He's a very good player, good defensive end for the Rams, but they still upgraded with Myles Garrett, at least for the short term. Myles will be 31 at the end of the year. But what this signals to pretty much all of us is that the Rams are win now. They're putting all the chips, pushing them to the table, and they're gonna risk it. No risk it, no biscuit. And we all know this year the Super Bowl's in LA in their home stadium, SoFi. And the last time the Super Bowl was in SoFi Stadium, the team that won the Super Bowl, the LA Rams. And that year, before that year started, they made it a trade. They got Matthew Stafford. They upgraded over Jared Goff. Now, both teams have done very well since the trades. Obviously, the Lions got their future quarterback, and he's played very well for them. Let him do a couple playoff appearances. The Rams got their Super Bowl with Matt Stafford. Put him over the top, at least on offense. Um, they also got Jalen Ramsey that year. So, the Rams are not afraid to make big moves to try and win a Super Bowl. And this is getting Myles Garrett is no different. And we got to remember as well that the Rams traded um, some more picks earlier this offseason, to get a cornerback, Trent McDuffie from the Chiefs. And then they signed him to an extension. So, the Rams feel like now's the time. And remember last year, they were in the NFC Championship game. They just couldn't get any stops. And they felt like defense was something that they needed to address, upgrade the positions, the defensive backs and the defensive line. McDuffie, now Myles Garrett, solidifies that. Again, it's for the short term. You know, as good as Myles Garrett is, he's in his 30s now, so there's not a lot of time left for him. As great as he is, he realizes the clock's ticking, and this is his best opportunity now to win a Super Bowl. And looking on paper right now, you kind of have to favor the Rams. At this point, yeah, Seattle's the defending champions, but they lost some players too. They lost Kenneth Walker to the Chiefs. They lost a couple defensive players, so we'll see how they'll do. They'll probably still make the playoffs and everything, but for the Rams, this is huge. This is a very huge move, a move that hopefully for them it pays off. As a Bucks fan, I hope it doesn't, but that's like probably wrong on that. So this again for the Rams, it's now or never. They're going to try, and Matt Stafford's window is closing up, so this is it. And the Rams, they're not going to have any first round picks for a while, so not having that kind of makes more sense now why they drafted Ty Simpson, which I still question. I'm not a big Ty Simpson fan. Didn't play a lot in college, but it makes sense now why they made that move. So that way, knowing that they're not going to have picks for a while, their GM Les Snead famously said, "F them picks." So, hopefully this move pays off for him. And you look on the other side of it with the Cleveland Browns, and you're going to get a young guy, 25-year-old Jared Verse, defensive rookie of the year back in 2024. He was the cog on that defensive line for the Rams. And it's, he's going to make the Browns a good defense, but he's going to an organization where, you just don't have a lot of hope. And I know, Jared Verse is from Ohio. He's from Dayton, Ohio. So it's kind of a homecoming for him. But hold on. Amber alert. Can you believe it? We get an Amber alert live. Okay. Enough of that. That Amber alert's probably Jared Verse like, oh my God, I'm going to Cleveland. No, I'm just kidding. But he'll do good. Jared Verse is going to be very good for the Browns defense, but you just feel for him because he's going to an organization where it's not, there's just no hope, in that organization. I mean, it's the same organization that gave a player the worst contract in NFL history, and Deshaun Watson, who's probably going to start this year. So, and Cleveland's going to pretty much tank. They know that the quarterback class is going to be in the next year's draft is going to be is quarterback heavy. Their eyeballs are on Arch Manning. So, this is a tank job for the Browns. I'm sure Jared Verse is going to do fine on that defense, but I don't think it's going to make a difference. They're not going to be good anytime soon. So you just feel for the guy, and I'm sure he wants to win badly, but I don't know if I trust that organization to build around him. I mean, they had Myles Garrett, the best defensive end in football, and they still only made the playoffs, twice? the whole time Garrett was there. So again, I don't have a lot of faith in the Browns doing anything to build around Jared Verse. So we'll see how it plays out. Yeah. We got some comments in here tonight. Let me get to those. Tampa Bay Rays fan, thanks for tuning in. He's on YouTube watching this. Seahawks lost both coordinators. Yeah. Yep, they lost Clint Kubiak to the Las Vegas Raiders. And who's their other one? I forget the other guy that left. But yeah, that certainly doesn't help Seattle. And Tampa Bay Rays fan 2008 says Verse has 2 years of his rookie contract, which he does. So, for right now, the Browns, are good in that department. They don't have to pay him big money yet. So depending on how Jared Verse does, which I think he'll do fine, probably get an extension with the Browns, unless they, franchise tag him. They can't come to a deal. It can always happen, but we'll see. And then Minter, the Ravens. Actually, Jesse Minter was with the Chargers last year. Tampa Bay Rays fan. He was the defensive coordinator for the Chargers under Jim Harbaugh. But that's the loss too for Harbaugh and LA for the Chargers. Tony Escarstega, thanks for tuning in tonight on Facebook. He says, "What's up, Ben? Feels good to have two of my teams in the championship, Golden Knights and the Spurs." Yeah, we're gonna get to those in a few minutes. We'll talk about that. But Tampa Bay's got you. Yes, you are correct. Yeah, no problem, man. And Minter, I think is going to do pretty good for the Ravens. I got a good feeling on this. I know it's tough to replace John Harbaugh, but somebody's got to do it eventually. So we'll see how it plays out up in Baltimore. But the other big trade today happened. It's kind of the worst kept secret in the world. We all knew the Eagles were going to trade AJ Brown. It was just a matter of time. And he went to the Patriots, which I think is another worst kept secret because that was the team that's been talked about, connected with AJ Brown. So he's going there, and the Eagles are going to get the 2027 fifth round pick of New England's, but they're going to get the 2028 first round pick of the Patriots. So we all knew that was coming. The Eagles and AJ Brown, it's a divorce, long time in the making. For New England, this is I think it's good, a fresh start for AJ. You give Drake May another weapon that they need on offense, so that's certainly going to help. If AJ's head's in it, if his head's is above the clouds, then it could be a problem. But I think if AJ Brown's focused, I think he's going to be a very effective piece of that New England offense. And there's history there because Mike Vrabel was his coach back in Tennessee, and they've kept in touch over the years. So it was just bound to happen. So good for New England. Maybe that puts them over the top. But again, they got a tougher schedule this year. So we'll see how it plays out. And for the Eagles, I think they'll be fine. Still got Devontae Brown. Some other good weapons on the team. But the question for the Eagles is, can Jalen Hurts, start playing better? Last year he kind of fell off a cliff a little bit and, didn't play as well. He's never, I think he's a good quarterback, but he's not the best thrower, doesn't have the best arm in the world, and I think a lot of times his decision-making isn't the greatest. So, the Eagles are going to start winning again. He's got to play better. I say that with, my Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield. He has to play better. I know he had injuries, but the decision-making sometimes isn't the best. So both guys have to play well for their teams this year if they're going to have a chance. And Tampa Bay Race fan says Hurts is a tad overrated. Yeah, I mean, I'm not putting him in the top 5 or maybe even the top 10, but there are a lot worse quarterbacks. And, I think with Jalen, again, it's a lot to do with decision making. And, he can get flustered in games. If their offensive line doesn't perform well, any quarterback can get flustered, but especially Jalen. So he has to improve, and losing AJ Brown, that doesn't help, and their chemistry wasn't the greatest either. So, that had a lot to do with it. But for New England, this is a good pickup. Now you got an extra receiver, an extra weapon that Drake May can use. They're still going to run the ball a lot to set up the pass play. And like I said, for that offensive line, the Patriots' offensive line has to be good this year. Last year in that Super Bowl, they were just annihilated. Will Campbell just got his lunch eaten by that Seattle front four who only rushed 4 in that Super Bowl. So, and a tougher schedule for New England. This year and last year, they had the benefit of playing one of the easiest schedules in football because the year before that they played, they had a bad record and they were able to get that 4th place schedule. So, so they're going to have to be better, and they're going to get everybody's best this year. And play the Bills twice every year. They play Seattle opening night, and so I mean, and I believe they play the NFC North this year. I believe they do. I think if that's so, it's like the Bears and Lions and Packers. It'd be tough games. So we'll see how that plays out. And this is a boomer bust for Mayfield. Yeah. Well, I mean, this year, like I said, Tampa Bay Rays fans got to play better decision making. And, the Bucks got Zach Robinson, the OC from Atlanta, who runs a playbook similar to Liam Cohen. So maybe that'll help him. The offensive line has to be healthy too. I don't want to just put it all on Baker. But that offensive line, not having Cody Mock last year really hurt them. And Barton, he didn't play his best football last year, so hopefully he improves. That line's got to be better as well. So we'll see how it plays out. All right, so now we can get to the NBA Finals. We'll start out with that. The Spurs and the Knicks. What a game on Saturday night. The Spurs were able to go into OKC in a Game 7, beat the Thunder 111-103. Wemby playing out of his mind. Stephon Castle's been phenomenal. I mean, you got to keep in mind how young this team is. And they went into OKC. You could say, well, the Thunder didn't have Jalen Williams. They didn't have AJ Mitchell, which is true. Maybe that would have made a difference for OKC, but still, you got to go into OKC, beat the champs in that environment, and how young that team is. That's impressive. I don't care who you are. That's impressive. And now they're going to play a New York Knicks team who been resting for a while. They've swept their last 2 playoff series, the Cavs and the Sixers. And this is going to be quite a series. You got a little older team in the Knicks with, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. So the talent's there. The veteran leadership's there. Meanwhile, with the Spurs, obviously Wemby, Stephon Castle, Vessel, Dylan Harper, the rookie. I mean, they got some veterans too with my distant cousin Luke Cornett. No, I'm just kidding. Had a great block on Chet Holmgren, in that Game 7. That was phenomenal. They got Johnson, they got Julian Champagny. who's played really well. Shot the ball very well for the Spurs in the series against OKC. So this is going to be a very interesting series. Starts in San Antonio. Not going to lie to you, like, kind of rooting for the Knicks because they haven't won a title in like 53 years, and it's good to see New York, on a championship stage. I know a lot of people outside of New York don't like New York sports teams, but I do like Jalen Brunson. I like Anunoby. So we'll see how it plays out. I'm gonna pick the Spurs to win this series in 6. I just think that the Spurs, their defense, their perimeter defense, is gonna give shooters some issues. Jalen Brunson runs the offense, and that offense goes through Jalen. You know, and look what San Antonio did to Shea Gilgeous, Alexander, or as I like to call him, Shea Gilgeous Alex Flopper. So I'm kidding, but look what they did to him. They gave him a lot of fits in that series, and it hurt their offense a lot. They weren't able to spread the floor as much in the half court. The Spurs rushed him, made him play quick. The Thunder are more of a half court ball movement kind of team, where the Spurs like to run and gun. They can play half court too, but they prefer to, play on the open floor, on the break. And the advantage for the Spurs offensively, obviously, is Wembanyama, who can play inside and out. He can shoot the three. He can do everything. And the good thing with the Knicks is they do have Karl Anthony Towns. They got Mitchell Robinson. They got the length. But can they? And Cat's never been a good defender, so he's going to have to play defense. He did pretty good against the Cavs. I'll give him that. Made a lot of hustle plays in that series. Rebounded the ball well. But I will say that this is going to be a very different type of series for the Knicks. Let's face it, the Cavs and the Sixers are not very good defensively. And, both teams didn't have good perimeter defense. So the Knicks were able to get their shots, make their shots. And that's another thing. They were shot over 55%, I believe, from 3-point range in the postseason. Can that kind of shooting, keep up? And can they keep that up? I just don't know, especially when you got guys like Dylan Harper, Vassell, who have great length defensively, who will get in your face and make it tough to, hit perimeter shots. I just think the Spurs are so good defensively that it's going to really take the Knicks out of their offense. Now, again, I do think the Knicks can win a game or two in this series because they have the talent to do it. Brunson can go off on games too. He can have great games. Mikal Bridges, he's going to have another great series as well. So this is going to be an interesting series, but I am going to pick the Spurs to win this one in 6. That's my prediction. Even though I'm rooting for the Knicks, I am going to pick the Spurs to win this series 4-2. So I can't wait. That starts Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC. So check it out. Tampa Bay Race fan says, to me, the Bucks is more of a spread offense versus in Atlanta. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's perfect for the Bucks. They got the receivers to be that spread offense. With the Meke Ibuka and, Ted Hurst, the rookie, Chris Godwin. That'll definitely help that receiving core out. Is Jalen Brunson's dad, Rick Brunson, a former NBA journeyman for the Knicks, Bulls, and Clippers in the mid-2000s? Yeah. Yeah, and Rick Brunson's also on the Knicks staff, assistant coach, so with Mike Brown as well. So, and that's one of the main reasons why Jalen Brunson signed with the Knicks in free agency when he left Dallas, was Rick Brunson helping him get there. So and that was a big deal. And now the Knicks are in the finals, so congratulations to them. Again, I think it's cool to see a New York team in a championship series. I know a lot of fans outside of New York don't like that; they hate New York teams, but it's always good to see a big market team back in it, especially the Knicks. They haven't been there in forever, so you know I'm hoping they win, but I think the Spurs are just a better team. So, and then we finally got the NHL Stanley Cup Finals coming up starting tomorrow night. My Vegas Golden Knights, Western Conference champions, are going to go up against the Eastern Conference champion Carolina Hurricanes. And this is going to be quite a series. I got to admit, I didn't think we would beat Colorado. I thought it would go 6 or 7 in that series, but Vegas shut them out. Shut down a very good offensive team in Colorado. They made goalie changes in that series. They forced Colorado to do that. And, Marner and Jack Eichel in the postseason, 39 points combined. So they've played very well. And listen, I'm happy to get Mitch Marner. I know a lot of people in Toronto were laughing about how Marner was a failure in Toronto in the postseason. But, he had a lot of pressure on him. But that organization, they stuck with that crew too long. Marner and Austin Matthews and Tavares. Now he's going for he's on a team, more, organization, better players on the team, better team players, I should say. And Marner's shined in Vegas, and the pressure's off him. He's a Toronto kid, but now going to the Golden Knights, he's played really well this season. Couldn't ask for any more from him. So I'm, for one, very happy that, I was happy when we got Mitch Marner before the season started. So, he's exceeded expectations, earned his contract, and, has played what him and Eichel are a good 1-2 punch on that first line. So, and now they're going to have to use him in the finals. So it's going to be interesting there. I've got a comment. I don't care for the Knicks and the owner of the Knicks is a complete tool. Yeah, Dylan. Yeah, finally he stayed out of the way and he's letting basketball people do basketball things. So imagine that. When the owner steps away, doesn't get involved. And the President Trophy curse is real. Colorado's the latest team to get hit by it. Yeah. It's happened more times than not. But Florida a couple years ago, they won the President's Trophy and still won the Stanley Cup. So it's ebb and flows, but Colorado hit them this year. So as for Carolina, they beat Montreal in 5 games. They were rusty in that first game, lost to Montreal, but after that Game 2 overtime win, they finally got it together. Frederick Anderson's done a great job behind the net. So is Carter Hart. We took a chance on Carter. For those who don't know, he unfortunately was involved in that those allegations that ended up, with the Canadian national team, youth team, the sexual assault. Ended up, they were cleared of charges. So it kind of, ruined his chances in Philly, and Vegas took a chance, signed him. At the time we had Aiden Hill on the net, but he's had a lot of injuries, and Carter Hart's been filling in ever since. He's taken the job over, and he's done a phenomenal job. So, he's staying out of trouble. He's playing great hockey right now, and this is going to be quite the test for Carter Hart as well. This is a team that he's going to be facing in Carolina that's got, guys like Seth Jarvis, Sebastian Aho, great scorers, with Slevakov, I guess that's how you pronounce it, Andrei Slevakov. So they got some good scorers there. Carolina's a good all-around team. Again, Frederick Anderson, great goalie for him, for Carolina. And if Vegas is going to win, Carolina, they got to do a good job against their forechecking because that's where Carolina strength is. The forechecking, they did that really well against Montreal. Guys like Stanhoven, Taylor Hall, they're gonna hit. They're gonna hit hard, hit fast, and like I said, guys like Jarvis and Acho, um, they know how to control the puck. Um, and for Vegas, they can't be on the defense, throughout the game. They can't let Carolina control the puck on the offensive zone. So that's going to be key for the Golden Knights. And also the power play. If Vegas can get on the power play, they usually score, and they've done that in the playoffs so far. I think they got the most power play goals in the postseason. So if they can get to the power plays, and this is a weakness of Carolina. Their 4-on-5 is not great. Carolina's best 5-on-5. So if we can get in that power play, early and often, I do believe Vegas does have a chance to win this series. But also, Vegas has to get one. They have to get one of these two games in Carolina. They have to split it going back to Vegas to make it a best of 5 where they can have the home ice. So that's important for the Golden Knights. Get that one win in Carolina. It can be done. Montreal did that. But they don't have nearly the talent like the Golden Knights do in the experience as well. So this is very important for Vegas to get off to a good start in this series. Again, their blue line's going to have to, overcome the forechecking for Carolina because they're going to hit and run, and they're going to make it dirty. Vegas more of a finesse team, style team. So if they can avoid that, and take advantage of their bench too, and their second and third lines, guys like Brett Howden and Pavel Defolovev, they've scored some goals off their second and third lines. So that's important too. Vegas, I think, has got a little more depth. So if they can take advantage of that, they got a good chance to win this series. Having said all that, I am going to go Carolina in 7. I think it's going to be a great series. I think it goes the distance, but in the end, Carolina with the home ice and finally getting to that Stanley Cup, which has been really haunting them for the last several years because every time they get to the conference finals, they just, whether it's Florida or anybody else, they couldn't get over that hump. So now that they have, Rob Brendamore's finally got this team to the Stanley Cup finals and has a chance to be, I think, one of the few people in NHL history to win a Stanley Cup as a player and as a coach of the same team. Remember, Brendamore won the Stanley Cup with the Carolina Hurricanes in 2006 with Stahl and those guys. So, this is their first time back since then. So, again, this should be a very, very good series, and I think it goes the distance. The distance, and I got Carolina in 7. Hope I'm wrong, but I hope Vegas wins. But we'll see what happens. I can't wait. That starts tomorrow night, 8 p.m. Eastern on ABC as well. So we got another comment. Can't wait, Rays fan, former Maple Leafs, Marner and Frederik Anderson make it to the Stanley Cup Finals. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's a curse of those Maple Leafs. And they got the number 1 pick this year, so go figure, right? And Flyers are cursed by goaltenders, Bobrovsky and now Hart. Yeah. Well, Philly made the playoffs this year. They lost to Carolina, got swept, but and Tortorella coached the Flyers as well. So now he's with Vegas. So how about that? John Tortorella, coming off the couch, the 8 games in the regular season and coaching the playoffs. Now about 4 wins away from winning another Stanley Cup. He won his Stanley Cup back in 2004 with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So maybe he could do it again for us in 2026. Oh, man. So, okay, read that comment. So, yeah, that is pretty much all I got tonight, guys, and girls out there watching on YouTube and Facebook. Again, Miles Garrett going to the Rams, big time move. Like I said, it better play off. It better pay off for the Rams. They got to at least make the Super Bowl for this to work. If they don't, then I don't think they win this trade. I don't. I'm not saying Cleveland will win the trade, because I don't. Either way, I don't think Cleveland wins this trade. Because the Browns are still the Browns. They'll screw it up. They're just not a good running organization. So, yeah. And then AJ Brown going to the Patriots too, which I think will help New England offensively. Brendan Moore played for the Flyers in the 90s. He was a solid player back in the day. Yeah, that's right. He did play for the Flyers. Then he went to Carolina. But yeah, a lot of Philly Carolina connection in the Stanley Cup Finals. So interesting. And Tampa Bay's fan, they got the Hurricanes in 6. Okay, yeah, hey, they're playing great hockey right now. Again, Carolina is very good with the forechecking, control the puck very well. They're fast, they hit. And for Vegas, they have to control that. They have to be just as quick, keep the puck in their possession, and rely on their depth to, come in and out. The second, third, and fourth lines, and we do got the depth for that. So it'll be a fun series. Can't wait to watch it. And with that being said, I'm going to take off here. I want to thank everybody who tuned in tonight, watching here on Have At It. You're watching this, by the way, on my YouTube channel, Ben Cornett 9015, as well on Facebook at the Ben Zone Facebook group, or on my personal page, Ben Cornett. This is going to be a great week in sports. And one more thing too, I want to pass along. We unfortunately lost somebody in the NBA today, in the NBA coaching fraternity. Rick Adelman passed away today. Unfortunately, he was the head coach of the Blazers, who went to the finals in the early 90s. Also coached the Sacramento Kings and the Minnesota Timberwolves. So sad day for the Adelman family. Thoughts and prayers, and rest in peace for a good coach, one of the better NBA coaches in the history of the NBA. So, yeah, tough loss there. And Anderson was another goaltender, couldn't get over the hump, lost to the Ducks in 2015. Conference final versus Hawks, first round exit with Toronto, yeah. And, speaking of, people that passed away, Claude Lemieux, unfortunately passed away. Circumstances, you can read it up. It's hard to talk about. He unfortunately committed suicide. But I say that because Lemieux was actually a mentor toward, I don't know if he's a mentor, I think he was an agent or something that helped Frederick Anderson. So, I know it's an emotional time for Frederick. So, and he's played really well under the circumstances. So now he's 4 wins away from winning his Stanley Cup. So again, it's going to be a great series, for the Stanley Cup Finals as well as the NBA Finals. Great week in sports, and that's why I want to do this show tonight. So that way, I'm going to be focused on watching these finals, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So everybody, take care, have a good night, and I will see you next time here on Have At It. Take care, everybody.